Hey there, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a high-stakes, incredibly time-sensitive reality. And the crazy thing is, it's happening right behind the drywall and beneath the floorboards of our own homes. We are looking at the hidden science of water damage. It's an invisible ticking clock, really. But here's the good news. Understanding the mechanics behind how it works can literally save your home, protect your health, and absolutely save your wallet. 45. Take a second to picture that. That is nearly 4 feet. 45 inches is the average amount of rainfall the Holly Springs, North Carolina area receives every single year. But, this isn't just some random weather statistic we can brush off. It's the trigger for a hidden ticking clock of structural decay. The exact moment that water finds a way into a home, whether that's from a massive summer thunderstorm or just a tiny, completely silent pipe leak, a precise, scientifically predictable chain reaction begins. All right, let's dive right into Section 1, the Holly Springs Risk Profile. So why are these specific suburban homes essentially ticking time bombs when it comes to moisture? Well, it boils down to a geographic triple threat. First off, we have that dense, heavy red clay soil that Wake County is famous for. When that clay gets saturated with rain, it shifts. And when it shifts, it creates massive hydrostatic pressure right against your foundation walls. It literally squeezes your foundation, basically forcing water indoors. Add to that the aging infrastructure in older neighborhoods, where mature tree roots are just crushing and cracking sewer lines. And finally, think about the rapid suburbanization from the 2000s housing boom. A lot of this newer construction replaced old farmland. That means it totally lacks the mature vegetation you actually need to naturally absorb heavy rain runoff. It is literally the perfect storm for basement seepage and crawl space flooding. To really ground the science in the real world, think about some of the hyperlocal hotspots around town. The actual topography of a neighborhood directly dictates the specific kind of water damage a home is going to suffer. If you're in a low-lying area near Sunset Lake or Utley Creek, you're facing constant threats from sudden flash floods and overflowing drainage systems. But then you have newer developments, like 12 Oaks. These are often built on solid concrete slabs, meaning they face a completely different, totally silent threat. Destructive supply line leaks happening completely hidden right beneath the flooring. The ground you build on dictates your risk, period. Moving right along to Section 2, the 3 water categories. So, how do professionals scientifically categorize this threat? Well, the IICRC, which is the certifying body for restoration pros, uses a super strict standard. Category 1 is clean water. Think of a burst freshwater pipe or pure rainwater. Category 2 is gray water. This carries some contamination. Maybe it's overflow from a dishwasher or a washing machine. But Category 3, that is black water. And that is the stuff of nightmares. It's grossly contaminated, highly dangerous water from sewage backups or storm flooding that has dragged in soil, chemicals, and biological waste. Knowing exactly which category you're dealing with instantly tells a professional what protective gear they have to wear, what materials absolutely must be ripped out, and what can actually be saved. Now, while categories measure how biologically gross and contaminated the water is, classes measure something else entirely: how deeply that water has absorbed into the building itself. And Class 4 water damage is the absolute toughest. We're talking specialty drying here. This happens when water has deeply, deeply permeated low-porosity materials. Think about your expensive hardwood floors, plaster walls, or a concrete subfloor. It is incredibly stubborn, it is super expensive to extract, and it requires major thermodynamic manipulation to actually dry out. Which brings us to a massively important factor. Section 3, the 48-hour mold window. Listen, this biological clock starts the exact millisecond a pipe bursts or a flood breaches your doorway. The crucial takeaway here is just how terrifyingly narrow your window of action actually is. Within the very first hour, water is rapidly migrating. It's saturating carpets, soaking into padding, and literally traveling up your drywall like a sponge. But here's the scary part. By hour 24, microscopic mold spores, which, by the way, are always floating around in the air naturally, they find this new moisture, and they start rapidly colonizing. This insanely short time frame is exactly why local companies like Silverline offer a strict 60-minute emergency response guarantee. It's not just a marketing gimmick. It is scientifically necessary to intercept that water before the 24-hour mold trigger gets pulled. If you do it right, by days 3 to 5, professionals are heavily involved in controlled structural drying to stop the decay in its tracks. As the industry warning goes, and I'll just read this directly because it's so important, Unaddressed moisture creates mold within 24 to 48 hours, compromises structural integrity, and voids most homeowner insurance policies. That last part is huge. Delaying professional intervention doesn't just mean your house gets a little musty smelling. It triggers a whole cascading sequence of absolute disasters that ends with rotting structural joists, and worst of all, your insurance company rightfully refusing to pay out because the damage wasn't mitigated promptly.
Let's take a breath and transition. Section 4, the science of restoration.
We're moving from the chaotic, total panic-inducing urgency of a sudden flood to the highly methodical, precisely controlled science of how the pros actually fix this. It's not just swinging a sledgehammer. Here is the exact, structured protocols certified technicians use. Step 1 is stopping the bleeding. That means rapid emergency extraction paired with thermal imaging so they can actually see the cold pockets of water hiding inside your walls. Step 2 is where the real magic happens, controlled structural drying and dehumidification. And finally, Step 3 is final moisture verification testing. The entire goal of this scientific approach is to salvage your property. They want to dry it out and save your expensive materials rather than just letting a demolition crew tear your whole house down to the studs.
And to do that successfully, experts rely on something called psychrometrics. Yes, we are going to geek out for a quick second here, so bear with me. Psychrometrics is the science of the thermodynamic properties of moist air. Restoration crews use these really complex psychrometric calculations to figure out exactly how many dehumidifiers and air movers are needed in a room. Not only that, but they calculate the specific angles to place them at. The goal is to gently coax the moisture out of your expensive hardwood floors without over-drying them, which would cause them to buckle or warp. It's an exact, delicate science.
But honestly, to execute those kinds of psychrometric calculations, you need serious commercial-grade technology. Your garage shop vac is just not going to cut it. We are talking about massive, truck-mounted extraction systems capable of moving unbelievable volumes of water. You need heavy-duty commercial dehumidifiers, infrared thermal imaging cameras to spot the invisible water trapped in wall cavities, and highly calibrated moisture meters to track the actual drying progress down to the literal percentage point.
All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Section 5, navigating costs and claims. Because let's be real, the second the water stops flowing, every single property owner has the exact same completely panicked question. What is this going to cost me? Well, the numbers are pretty staggering. Even a so-called minor bathroom leak averages around $3,000. But the average water damage claim overall in North Carolina, that sits at a really hefty $12,000. And a whole home flood, you are very quickly soaring past $20,000. These figures perfectly illustrate how a tiny ignored appliance leak can silently saturate your subfloors and escalate into a massive, bank-breaking claim if you leave it unchecked.
Now, I know it's incredibly tempting to grab some beach towels and try to mop it up yourself. It is a very dangerous illusion. DIY cleanup almost always leaves trapped moisture behind, which absolutely guarantees hidden mold and structural rot down the line. Plus, as we mentioned earlier, it can completely void your insurance. Professional restoration is a whole different ballgame. They utilize industry-standard Xactimate billing software, which is exactly what insurance adjusters trust and look for. They provide the highly detailed daily moisture logs required to legally prove the home is actually drying, and they guarantee their work meets those strict IICRC standards. Because here's the truth. Insurance coverage can be a total maze, and it comes with strict rules that most people completely misunderstand. Standard homeowner policies generally cover sudden and accidental damage, like a pipe bursting today, but they almost always exclude gradual damage. So that slow leak under the kitchen sink you've been ignoring for a year, yeah, they probably aren't covering that. Furthermore, to get any claim approved, carriers demand extensive daily documentation of the entire drying process. And here is an absolutely crucial point. If the water came from outside, say a storm swells Utley Creek and it flows into your living room, that requires a completely separate FEMA flood insurance policy. Your standard policy will not cover it. Navigating all these loopholes is exactly why having a certified professional acting on your behalf is so incredibly vital. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to really mull over. If a pipe burst behind your drywall right this very second, how many hours or even days would pass before you even noticed the clock was ticking? Water damage is a literal race against time, biology, and structural physics. Knowing the science behind the risk is your absolute best defense. Thanks so much for joining me today, and hey, stay dry out there.